Hey guys, back again. So today Adam has sent me over his squat, so I'm going to go through some analysis for that. If you want this done for yourselves, send it over my way and I will do a free video analysis for you, just like this one. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so number one, I tend to steer people away from using a bar pad. There's a few reasons behind this. My main concern is you can't feel where the bar is placed on your back. With that in mind, without knowing where it's placed, it can really change your squat mechanics. If the bar's quite high or the bar's quite low, you still aren't sure where the bar is because that pad just distributes the weight in a way across your back that doesn't give you enough feedback. So I would suggest when people start getting used to the bar being on their back, it takes a couple weeks before it kind of desensitizes to the bar. So persevere, you will get used to it, I promise. It was the same for me when I started squatting. I used to put a bar pad on my back and then eventually someone told me not to do it. A couple weeks later I forgot I even used to put it on. I want you to pay attention to your walkout. The walkout is something people don't pay attention to. Normally what I say is as soon as your hand touches the bar, your squat has started. So with that in mind, it's game time. So everything you do once your hand touches the bar is part of your squat, including the walkout. So I know that you like to squat wide, but normally you'll find you're a bit more comfortable unracking the bar in a slightly narrower stance. So maybe start a little narrower, unrack, and then walk back out into your preferred stance. There's just a lot of kind of wasted energy in finding your stance. Now, again, this is one of those things that people don't realize and they don't pay enough attention to in my book. So I want you to pay a bit more attention to it. We have 3 steps. 2 big ones, and that third one is there in case we need a little wiggle to find that position. So try not to spend too much time wiggling around. Sometimes the case is you just can't quite find the right spot, so I do understand. But try and break it down just to 3 steps, that third one just being a little wiggle. Immediately, there's a bit of an issue with your hips shifting to the right. Now, what I would say is you've stood a little too wide for where your knees can be controlled, for where your mobility is kind of at its strongest. A slightly narrower stance is going to help you push your knees out. So you can see your knee is drifting in on this side in comparison with where your ankle is. So you should always be able to keep your knees over your ankles, otherwise you'll find knees are caving in. So I would say definitely a narrower stance to the point where you can keep your knees over. And you can see because of that, the bar is slightly skewed on your way down, and that's just not gonna help you have a very efficient lift. Your elbow position suggests you are not keeping tight through your upper back. So elbows should stay still. So with that in mind, what I want you to do is think like you've got the bar over your back and you're looking to bend it over your back. And what that should do is help to engage through your upper back, in particular your lats, and that should keep your elbows still. With upper back tension, that keeps everything still. The only things that should move in your squat is your lower extremities. Your hips, your knees, and your ankles. Everything else essentially stays still. So if you've got upper back tension, that will keep your arms, your shoulders, your thoracic still, and your spine as well, of course. Everything else that I listed there, hips, knees, ankles, they're the things that move. I just want to rewind that a little bit there. So I want you to pay attention to your feet and what happens when you come up in your squat. Little lift at the heels there. Especially on that rep there, so you can see your heels really rising up. So we've got a lot of weight on our back. we want to stay balanced. As soon as you're up on your tiptoes, you are off balance. We want as much contact with the floor with our feet as we can. So I would suggest as you're coming up, yes, you want to power up, but we don't want to come up to the point where we lift off of our heels, as we can see here. So keep your feet flat down into the floor. Now I can see you're struggling to hold onto the bar. You know, your thumb has come off. That's not the end of the world, but in terms of your positioning, you have cocked your wrists back. Force travels best through straight lines, so we want to try and get as straight lines as we can, and this is going to lend itself back to that whole upper back tightness. If we can't grip the bar, we can't get tight on the bar using our upper back. So there's a few suggestions here. This is normally down to shoulder mobility. Now there's a few cheats we can use. What I like to do is squat thumbless, so that my hands go onto the bar like so, and my shoulder mobility, my wrists just much prefer that position. So perhaps we try that. If that doesn't cut it, then maybe we try a wider grip. If that doesn't cut it still, we also have what's called a talon grip, where we can drop the pinky off, so it's still thumbless, the pinky comes off, and it allows for a bit more range of motion with people with particularly tight shoulders. If your shoulders are particularly tight, also I would suggest to get in a bit of upper back mobility, shoulder mobility. That should hopefully help you get into a better position at your wrists and a tighter upper back once again. I don't mind if someone's thumbless. When you go into a talon grip, I normally refer to that as, it's a bit of a last resort. I don't want someone doing that all the time. It's still secure on your back. If someone's thumbless all the time, I don't care, that's fine. Or thumb around, of course, that's absolutely fine. Talon, on the other hand, I would prefer someone to address their mobility a bit more so that they don't have to rely on it. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, and also just at the end of that rep there, we can actually see the bar leaving your back. So again, pull that bar over your back. Think like you are bending it over your back. That's how tight I want you to grip the bar into your back. Again, that lends itself to just that extra bit of tension through your back. So you can just see here, as you come up, bang, it just kind of leaves your back. That also will misplace it on your back. As you come back down, your squat mechanics have changed. We don't really want that happening. So Adam has also sent a video on the side, which is really useful. So yes, it's great to have a video of it, but if we can have two angles, where one at the back or the front, and one definitely on the side, that's brilliant. You just get more feedback. So anyone wanting their analysis done, the more angles, the better. So again, pay attention to your walkout, see how many steps we're doing, cut it down to 3. So what I always look at, or one of the things I always look at, I want you to pay attention to the center of the barbell. See what happens to your bar path. Subtle on that one. As you come down, it does tip you forward a little bit. This is a suggestion that either the bar is too high or there's a mobility issue somewhere. I think it's a combination of two. Bring that stance in a little bit and you'll be able to keep the bar in a better position as you come down. And also I do think perhaps a slightly, only a little bit lower bar position might suit you and your squat mechanics. This is something that might change as you go into your slightly narrower stance that I have suggested, where you might not need to change the bar position just by simply going a little narrower. That might sort out your bar path. These are things that I don't know until I see. So very much pronounced on this particular rep. You can see the weight has carried you forward. It's going to carry you to your toes. So the weight should be evenly distributed through your foot. So it's both through the toes and the heels, which means it should end up in your midfoot. Basically where your laces are tied, that's where the weight should be cutting you through on the side when looked on profile. So I just want to have a look at the depth that you're hitting. Okay, so that's roughly the bottom of your squat there. Now, this depends on goals, it depends on the individual's mobility as well. Now, again, I think going back to what I've said earlier, a slightly narrower stance, you'll be able to get a bit more comfortably into depth. With that wider stance and your left knee buckling in, you won't hit depth there. However, with a narrower stance, I think you will find it easier. So when I refer to depth, what I am talking about is your hip crease, which is roughly here. I want to see go beneath your knee here. Now that's to powerlifting standard, and I've mentioned in another video that I critiqued as to, you know, I think there's a lot of reason as to why we should be hitting depth. So I'll go into it in this video. I didn't go into it in my last video. Now what happens when you come down beneath your knee, your hamstrings get loaded correctly in a way that they work as an antagonist to the quadricep muscles. If it's just purely loading quadricep, which tends to be the case in higher squats, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but your hamstrings don't get as much of a look in as they should. And if you're constantly doing high reps, that might create a bit of a pull on your knee down the line. So if someone does want to do kind of shallower squats, what I normally suggest is make sure you've got some full range of motion squats in as well, and then eat your heart out, knock yourself out, do some shallow squats, and take advantage of the fact that you've got a shorter range of motion, you can handle more weight, you'll utilize your glutes and your quads more. There's nothing wrong with that. Normally though, the caveat is make sure you are doing some full depth squats in other workouts or prior to. Another thing I want you to make a note of is in between your reps, I want to see much more of a deep breath in. So I'm going to direct you to one of my YouTube videos about breathing and bracing. I want you to understand how to brace correctly and how to breathe correctly for your squats. So the squat is a spine loaded exercise. The weight is on the spine. We need to make sure the spine has some support. And that support is going to come from not only the musculature in your torso, but it's also going to come from your breath. So I'll go into it quite quickly. In this video, do make sure you watch the video that I will link all about breathing and bracing. So you're going to take the deepest breath you can, and you're going to fill your belly. You're going to fill out to your obliques. You're going to fill out to your back muscles or your erectors. And essentially pulling the diaphragm down pushes the organs in our gut out, and that's going to create what's called intra-abdominal pressure. That intra-abdominal pressure is going to support around your spine, and again, referring back to what I said earlier, we don't want any movement here. All the movement occurs in the lower portions of the body. So if we've got all that tension, all that intra-abdominal pressure, that is going to reduce the chances of your torso moving. A reduction in the chance of your torso moving is a reduction in the chance of injury. It also helps with efficiency of lifting. If something's moving here, we can't get that force to travel through the legs as efficiently. So remember I said, force travels best in straight lines. If this isn't a straight line, these are never going to be in a straight line because that's what we're moving with. But we're now passing weight through something that is moving before we get to the part that we do want the force going into. It's just going to make it less efficient. So learn how to breathe and brace. As you can see, as you go through your reps, you're coming up. There's not much of a breathing. There's not much of a brace. You will be braced because naturally you kind of have to, otherwise you'd buckle, but you can brace harder. So obviously Adam and I have been chatting, and he has mentioned that he never really feels his glutes in his squats. Now, I'm not going to address that specifically yet. What I want you to do, Adam, is go away, have a think about all these points I've made, address them, come back to me, let me know, and chances are you're probably feeling your glutes a little bit more. And then once you've got all those points down pat, that's when we can start adding in perhaps a little bit of assistance work that is going to help to activate your glutes and help to understand the movement pattern and how they should be firing during it. I hope all of those points have made sense. Again, if anybody wants to send their videos my way on the big three, so that's the squat, the bench, and or the deadlift, please do. I'm more than happy to analyse them for you, and it's all for free. Thanks for watching.